Hi, Prof. Okay, we're gonna start now.
You're letting people in, right?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Young Tsing, and I'll be your MC for today's NTU Open House program, a war of our own making, sociology as a challenge to the inevitable. Before we begin, I want to inform everyone that there will be a Q&A session following this presentation. So feel free to send in your questions via Sli.do.com using the event code SOC-2023 or the link that you can find in the description below. Now, please extend a very warm welcome to our speaker, Asst Prof Shannon Ang. Prof, over to you. Prof, you're muted.
Yeah, sure. Hold on. Okay. So thanks everyone for coming. Today we're going to talk about what sociology is and how it can, I guess, apply in your lives. So before we start, I'm just going to say I'm not going to take very long. So if you have any questions about what sociology is and how it measures up against other choices that you might have, feel free to write it down and I'll answer them later towards the end. I'll give more time for Q&A. Okay. So the question that you have in your mind now probably is, what is sociology, right? And many of you have phones, you have computers, you will see that you'll get answers like this, right? So if you Google it, Google will tell you sociology is the study of people, groups, social causes and consequences of human behavior. Lots of words around organizations, classes, cultures, institutions, and very, very similar words like this: human social behavior, patterns of social relationship, study of social relations. But what here is really at the core of sociology? I'm going to try and distill that for you right now. So, in a nutshell, and this is what I think sociology is, it's really about understanding how people and groups of people function and interact in social contexts, right? This is not just theories that we pluck out from the air, but we construct these theories by approaching it and analyzing it in a systematic way. Why do we do this? We do this so that we can produce knowledge with implications for our everyday lives. But why is this even important, you might ask, right? And I think sociology, if you ask people who are in the program and your seniors in the program, they will have many reasons why they think sociology is important to them and what they think is important for their own lives, right? But I'll just give you my own reason and why that's important to me. So for me, sociology is important because it challenges the inevitable, which is the title of this talk, right? And I just want to say that it challenges what seems inevitable. What do I mean by that? I think in the media and in everyday situations, if you talk to people, we hear a lot of the language of inevitability, right? So for instance, this article on the left saying when kids say, I lazy what, right? I lazy what is kind of a message of inevitability. Like I can't help it, I'm just lazy, right? Or ideas about being born that way, right? Whether I'm just born this way, right? I'm like that, inevitable. Other kinds of languages are, for instance, you see in the news, right? So things like, oh, we can't have migrant workers on buses. We have them on lorries because otherwise it would cause acute pain to the industry, right? We talk about acute pain. It's not possible. It's not possible. The market won't allow it, right? Or things like, oh, it's necessary for harmony. We need the ethnic integration policy so that we can have harmony, right? So this is the language of inevitability, right? We can't help it. In this forum letter, you see this thing. It says, I'm going to read to you. It says, in this digital age, most businesses will have fewer in-person services and self-service technologies are replacing face-to-face interactions. Hence, it is imperative that older adults make every effort to learn and embrace technology, to live independent lives and not be left behind, right? This again is the language of inevitability. It's like older people cannot catch up, they will get left behind because technology is going to move on and it will leave them behind, right? Like they just need to do it. What sociology does is that it breaks down all these assumptions, right? It shows us that many of these taken for granted inevitabilities are socially constructed. We create these inevitabilities. We think of them as inevitable when they may or may not be, right? So this means that most of these things are not inevitable. Why are they not inevitable? Because we made them that way, and so we can change them, right? Humans made many of these social structures, and humans can change them for the better or for the worse, hopefully for the better. So, for instance, technology does not have to leave older people behind, right? We can create technology in a way that is friendly to older people. We can craft our services so that it doesn't leave them out, right? Students from poorer background do not have to be at risk of falling behind in education, right? We can craft structures so that, for instance, we don't need tuition to keep up with schoolwork. We don't have to deal with enrichment being a class stratified thing, right? And then finally, women do not have to be confined to the domestic sphere. There's something that we create, right? These roles and gender roles, we create them, and we don't have to follow them because society defines them and we can change them. So what are we especially interested in? Sociologists are especially interested in why we think some things are inevitable. Why do we think that there are certain rules around, for instance, women in the workplace or women at home? What are our assumptions, and why are these assumptions flawed, right? Why do we think this way, and how can we challenge these assumptions? Can we imagine a different kind of world, right? Who are those that have challenged these assumptions or tried to change them, and why do they succeed or fail? So you can think about, for instance, social movements like Me Too, like Black Lives Matter. These are movements that try to change some of these inevitabilities around in the world, right? And then third, who benefits from the status quo and who suffers, right? What does the current state of things, who does it benefit? And who are the people who are suffering from it, right? So for instance, if we keep thinking of women as being confined to the household and not out there to have careers, then there are certain sets of people who are benefiting, for instance, the men, and there are certain sets of people who are being restricted, right? We also ask other questions, like why are some people groups more likely to die compared to others during a natural disaster? So for instance, say in the pandemic in the past 2 to 3 years, some groups are more affected than others, right? So you have people who have jobs in, say, the service industry or the music industry, and they are more affected, right? Perhaps some people had more access to healthcare services and were able to access hospitals more quickly, right? This is much more apparent in other parts of the world. So inequality in outcomes, right? When something bad hits. Second, do doctors take women's pain less seriously? Do women's health outcomes differ from men because of this? Very similar, right? Things about inequality. Why is it that some people have certain outcomes and others don't, right? What are the mechanisms by which this is reproduced? What strategies do marginalized groups take in order to be heard, right? So there you see Black Lives Matter and Me Too. Are algorithms racist, right? We think about technology as being neutral, but can technology also be racist, right? These are things that we think about. And so, like I said, we don't pluck these conclusions from the air. We investigate these questions using a variety of methods, including talking to people in depth, focus groups, ethnographies, survey methods, what we tend to call big data. So a bunch of systematic ways to try and understand human behavior through research, right? So these methods are approaches that help us to describe what we see and how they change over time in different contexts that we see, right? These methodologies help us to be rigorous, to be transparent, and to be systematic so that people don't say, oh, this is just in your mind, it's not real. But if you come to sociology, what would you learn? So I tell my students this all the time in all my classes. These are the 3 things that I expect that they will take away from sociology as they go out into the world, right? The first is intuition. You need to have a questioning and a critical mind, and when you see certain things, you need to immediately know what is the problem with it, or what is good about it, or what is bad about it, right? You should be able to quickly make sense of the ever-changing world around you, right? Because the society is always changing. So you need that intuition. Second, you need the research skills, right? So that you can be able to back up your statements with evidence that you've collected from the world around you. Then third, you need to be able to articulate. So you need to be able to write, to speak, to present about things that matter to everybody else. So this is not just about having it in your mind and it's all in your mind, but about being able to communicate it, being able to empathize, to communicate with other people, to convince other people that what you're saying is right or wrong, right? In a precise and a concise way. And so all these skills that you see, they are useful for lots and lots of different occupations, right? Useful for everyday life as well, because you deal with society and you interact with society on an everyday kind of basis. I've listed here a bunch of different industries that our students go to. So you have the whole range of things like journalism, comms, content creation, human resources, behavioral insights, lots of different government agencies as well. So in sociology, we take in about 100 plus minus 10, 20 students a year. So you across the 4 years, you might have about 300 to 400 students. It's a rather nice, cozy kind of community. And the faculty work on a bunch of many different things in their research. I've listed here, I've pasted here a few kind of photos of books and engagements. And they all engage actively with society. So I urge you, if you are interested, go and Google them, Google our faculty list and see what they do in society, and you can figure that out by yourself. The student community, as Yongjin will tell you, is is quite supportive and quite welcoming. So I would encourage you to speak to them to find out more. Okay, that's all I have.
Right. Thanks so much, Prof Shannon, for the very enlightening presentation. I think a lot of people do wonder what sociology is really about. I think your presentation has sort of shed light into what a lot of it is. Yeah. So now we're gonna go to the Q&A. So like I mentioned just now, this Q&A session, you can submit your questions on the Sli.do. The link is in the description below. I will be flashing the QR code for the Sli.do right now. So just scan this QR code and then you can let me, and then after that you can ask your questions here. Okay, over here. Yeah, so scan it and then after that you can let us know. I already have a few questions coming in. So Rob, maybe you can start with a few questions first.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the very first one with lots of upvotes is this question: how is sociology different from other social sciences such as psychology, which is a question we have to contend with quite a lot, I think, especially with people from outside the course asking. What are your thoughts?
Yes. So sociology deals primarily at the structural level, right? So in psychology, psychologists are very interested in your internal processes of thinking, how you process things, what your emotions are, your personality, how do you approach certain issues at the individual level. Sociology is more about the structural level, which means maybe I'll use an example. So, for instance, if you think of, I don't know, if you like watch soccer or something, or you follow some club, right? Let's just say like Liverpool, right? Let's say Liverpool, right? Psychologists are interested in like, why are you a Liverpool fan? Like, why, how do you think as a Liverpool fan when somebody wins or loses, right? Sociology is more interested in like, what is Liverpool, right? If the whole team changes in Liverpool over time, like, does Liverpool still exist? What does Liverpool exist as, right? It is kind of a structure that is there, despite the people inside it changing all the time, right? The Liverpool team changes all the time, but there's still a culture, there's still some things that make Liverpool Liverpool, right? And so that's what sociologists are interested in. We are interested in things at the structural level, rather than the internal individual level, which is what psychology is more interested about. As compared to other things, for instance, other social sciences like economics. Of course, economics is really about the market and how what are the laws of the market and how things would change, dealing with people and how prices and things like that affect people. PPGA is really kind of like very similar to sociology, but they focus a lot more on power, and how politics takes place in everyday life, right? So you can see PPGA or political science almost as a kind of much more specialized in sociology of power. So we are good friends. We 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 look at about the same things. Sociology, although is a bit broader, and so we look at many other areas other than arenas of power.
Yes, I think we do agree that sociology is quite broad. I think there's things like political sociology, which is more towards what public policy is sort of like. But I think in sociology, maybe like you said, I think it's a very good explanation. But things to do with like social interactions, I think would set us apart from something like psychology or like social structures, right? Prof, we have another question. So this question is about prerequisites necessary. So like what do we need to major in sociology? And I mean, I guess it's a two-part question. So the second part is what sort of career prospects are there for this course of study? So maybe you can go with the first part first. What prerequisites are necessary, right, to major in sociology?
I don't think there are any strong prerequisites. Of course, I think we require people to have some decent command of English, right? So I think when you come to sociology, you do need to be prepared to read a lot and write a lot, right? And so the prerequisites, I don't think. I mean, I think if they are mostly related to language, and that's really to help you to go through the program. We don't want you to struggle through the program and not be able to enjoy it, the process, right? What sorts of career prospects are there? So I mean, sociology is really a discipline that is very, very broad. And so I studied sociology in undergrad as well, and all my friends from back then have gone everywhere, really like everywhere, right? Some of them became civil servants, some of them became HR professionals, some of them are in the media industry. You can do anything you want. And why is that? Why can you do anything you want? Because sociology gives you a set of tools that can be applied in every domain of life, right? So even if you are, say, in a comms role and doing, like, for example, PR, public relations, right? You need to be able to understand how society moves in order to react properly. Of course, we will all have some example of PR disasters in our mind, of people, for example, having, if the last one I remember is that ad with what's the actor's name? The DJ's name, right? Where he portrayed different races, and that got a huge outcry. You need that kind of sensitivity to deal with those kinds of topics, and we deal with this more and more each day, right? We talk about race and religion and gender all the time, and so having a good intuition around this makes you valuable to any kind of industry that deals with people in general, right? Yeah.
Right. I think that's actually that's very true. It's something like the sociological imagination, right? That's the thing that we take away. That really helps us to apply ourselves to a lot of many different jobs out there. Yeah, something like the sociological imagination, which is I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have from sociology is to look at the world in a different lens. Yeah. Then another question we have, I think this is I guess like one of the questions I had when I first came into sociology was, are students coming in from poly at disadvantage when they decide to do sociology? So I think maybe I can sort of answer this one first, because I came from poly. So I would say that if anything, we are at a little bit of an advantage because university structure is very similar to poly. I think like university is just a sort of like stricter or like more advanced poly. It's more group work, less structured. It's not as rigorous, or like you're not as confined as you are in JC or in secondary school. So I think like you have some sort of head start on the pattern and style that you do assignments in. And then of course, like I think depending on what your diploma is in poly, it also helps you a little bit. I was from communications in Yan, so it did help me a lot in writing and help me a lot in like speaking about the stuff that we want to talk about, and reading and about the sociological concepts as well. Yeah, so I think for me, I wouldn't say it puts you at a disadvantage. I would say if anything, there is a little bit of advantage to it. But what do you think, Prof?
I have nothing to add. I was from poly as well, so
Yeah. It is. Yeah, the thing is, right. Like it does give you some sort of like, I mean, like if anything, it doesn't disadvantage you. It just gives you a bit of a head start. If anything, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the strong answer is no lah. No, you're not at a disadvantage, right?
Yes, definitely. So even if you're from poly or anywhere, just apply, and then like when you're in here, you'll see that there's no difference. When you're in here, you're in there. There's nobody from JC or who will have a better an advantage over you. Yeah. Okay. So the next question we have something to do with minors. How much of a difference is there if I were to do a minor in sociology as compared to a major? What do you think, Prof? What a sigh.
I mean, this is a interesting question. I mean, it depends on what your major is then, right? And how you decide to kind of synergize that kind of thing. I mean, a major which means that you get more interaction, you get more content knowledge within sociology itself. And because sociology is such a broad discipline, it's nice to be able to see from many different angles, right? Taking different kinds of sociological modules. If you just want like a taste of it here and there, I guess a minor combined with something else that you're interested in may make sense for you. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to get out of this. Do you want to dive deep into sociology, or do you want it to kind of supplement something else that you already have? Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what combination that looks like, and different combinations have different pluses.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, like it really depends on what you want out of your university education, what you really want to learn or what you want to specialize in. So, but I think you also do understand that people are not really that sure before they before they actually take the course itself. So like, I mean, if you're doing it as a minor, there's always a chance to upgrade to a second major like eventually. So you don't really have to you take the mods, and you're like, oh, actually if you're really very interested in it or you think you're good at it, then by all means, you can still upgrade to a second major eventually if you want to. Yeah. There's another question that we have. It's about the roles. Okay, so the question is, due to the small cohort size of sociology, may I ask the role of, in terms of percentage, does grade versus portfolio play in getting accepted into the program? So yeah, Prof, in your opinion, do you think grades or portfolio, which one matters? Like what sort of play do they have when it comes to being accepted?
How to answer this question? I think we evaluate you as a whole. If obviously you have grades. I mean, the system is Singapore system is still driven by grades. But once you are above that certain threshold of being able to, like I said, all the admissions and things like that, they are all based off whether we think you will succeed in the program, right? So we don't want you to come in and then struggle. So grades are important because they are kind of a first kind of marker for us to gauge how prepared you are to embark on this course. But then if perhaps your grades may not be up to par in some way, then of course we will look at other parts of your portfolio as well and see if you can still succeed in this program based on your other experiences. So we really look at it in a broader point of view. Yeah,
Okay, I think that's a good answer. I think I mean, of course your grades matter a little bit, but then like there's other stuff as well, right? That we can look at. I think in sociology we also learn that grades is a product. I mean, grades can be a product of your social circumstances and things like that. So if you do have any other sort of like things in your resume or portfolio, then it does come into play a little bit. So if you're applying, then you can include all of that, and then the admissions people will take a look at that portion of it. Well, the next question is about teaching styles, Prof. So, what is the teaching style for sociology? Because the person sees seminars and even graduation projects. So, would you say it's sort of our teaching style like?
I think it depends on what course you're taking and who you're taking it with. So, I mean, across the different faculty, we all have our own teaching styles, and I think that there are certain cores to the way that we teach, right? So of course we have lectures and we have tutorials, but sociology is a kind of a subject that benefits from a lot of interaction, a lot of dialogue, right? So you will see a lot of that happen in class. We like small classes, but it also depends on the topic you're taking, right? So in sociology, there are the substantive courses that teach you certain topics, right? So I teach, for example, medical sociology or sociology of the life course, but there are also slightly more technical courses like your stats sequence, your research methods, your research practicums. So it depends on the type of module that you're taking. We will try and use as much as possible what fits that content. But as sociologists, we always like dialogue, right? Being able to talk to people. So that is a kind of primary style of teaching that we have here.
Yeah, I think that's a quite good explanation as well, Prof. I think unfortunately, I've never had the good fortune of taking any of your classes, but from my experience in sociology, I think one of the really nice things that you get to know is because sociology is a science. So we do a lot of research, and I think one of the good things that I take away from a lot of the courses that we have is we do get to conduct our own research as students, and I think that's one of the things that really prompted me down a sort of research track in my subsequent career or whatever. But I think being able to sort of like participate in this sort of like research is a big part of sociology. And I think yeah, like if you're and you enjoy that kind of thing, sociology would be a very good course for you. Yeah, I have a very interesting question, Prof. I just wanted to ask you as well. It's as an undergraduate, I mean, like, because you were undergraduate in sociology, right? So, and then after that, you went on to teach sociology. So the question is, what is the most interesting thing you've learned in sociology so far? So let us know, like, when you're undergraduate, what's the most interesting thing? And after you graduated and did your postgraduate and then your subsequently your as a lecturer, what was the most interesting thing you learned?
What is the most interesting thing that I've learned in sociology?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm gonna like sell my own course and because that was what I was fascinated by. That being sick is a social process, right? I think we all think that having like disease and all this completely objective thing, right? But actually it's not, right? Being sick is a very social experience. So for instance, if you're sick, then you're not expected to fulfill some of your social roles, right? Like go to school or go to work or like deal with things, right? You're expected to stay at home. Then you're expected also to look for help, right? To look for some sort of medical help, right? If you don't do it, then people would kind of ostracize you or things like that. So being sick is not just about you have some disease and you're ill or whatever, but it also has a strongly social element to it. And not just that, but certain diseases are medicalized because of social reasons, right? So for instance, just recently the WHO tried to medicalize I think it's the AMA, the American Medical Association, tried to medicalize obesity, right? So is obesity a disease or is it not a disease, right? And what are the social implications of treating it as a disease versus not a disease? I think that's one of the things. I mean, being able to understand diseases as a social process, one of the most interesting things to me as an undergrad.
Yeah. I think that's like something very interesting to think about. I think that a lot of the things that we don't think of as a social process can actually be, right, like getting sick and things like what Prof said. What about when you were became a professor or in your postgrad? Was there anything else that you wanted to add about the interesting things that we learned?
I mean, I did my grad school in the States. So what's interesting to me, of course, is our assumptions, right? So for instance, here we treat race and ethnicity as the same thing usually. When we say race, we mean ethnicity and the opposite way around. But when I went to the States, I figured very quickly that wasn't the case, right? That race and ethnicity can mean quite different things and are linked to quite different histories. And so seeing that as a result of a kind of long historical process was something that was very interesting to me.
Right. Yeah, I think for myself, I think one of the most interesting things I've learned in sociology, actually, like maybe when we go down to the very basic level in year one, when I first entered as an undergraduate, I think one of my seniors was talking about this thing called sociological imagination. It's like, oh, you'll see the world differently, and then like you just realize one day, suddenly the world changes for you. And I didn't believe that because I was like, what do you mean? I'm just reading and I'm just doing classes, and what do you mean like one day I'll like look at the world differently? And I think what you're talking about is the promise of sociology, right? Is that you get to see the world entirely in a different lens. It's called the like this sort of sociological imagination. We look at different things. It's like what Prof was saying about being sick and the medicalization of certain diseases. You never seen it that way until you read about it, until you start learning about it, and then so all of a sudden, I guess you call it like both a curse and a blessing. When you look at different things, then you look at, then like, sometimes you're reminded of the sociological process that go behind. You're like, oh no, stop. I just want to enjoy myself in that moment, but you can't do it because now you know about the underlying sociological processes and things like that. And it really helps you to see the world in a completely different light. And I think that's one of the most interesting things I've learned as a sociology student is the ability to do that. Is that not everything is really as it seems, as it is. A lot of things are socially constructed. A lot of processes go into making the world and the things that you look at what they are. Yeah, I think that's the most interesting thing for me at the very least. Yeah. Okay. I'm moving on to something a bit more less about the content, but more about the structure of the course itself. I think this question is looking at what are the assignments and examinations like in sociology? Prof, do you have any inputs?
So I think, again, like I said, it depends on the topic that you're looking at. But again, different people have different approaches to assignments and whether they are examinations. Usually these are writing based or presentation based, right? Because like I said, sociology is a very you have to be able to articulate, you have to be able to convince, right? And so there are many assignments where they will ask you to present, maybe do a bit of research, do a bit of reading, and then you present what you have read, lead some discussions. There are some assignments which are more writing based, so you definitely I think most courses would have one or two kind of writing assignments, whether they are short or whether they're long, whether it's a research paper, whether it's kind of a short answer type of question. Exams, when there are exams, some courses don't have exams. When there are exams are mainly essay based. So they give you a question and ask you to think about the topic and what you think about the topic, and you're supposed to say what you believe about the topic, or what you have learned about the topic in that sense. You're expected here to synthesize, not just regurgitate, but synthesize. So that means taking different things from different parts of the course that you learn, and then creating your own kind of coherent thought process or idea based off that, and understanding how you apply that in your everyday life. In writing that down, right? So I think that is usually what the assignments in sociology are based around. Of course, here and there you might get the occasional rather interesting assignment, like asking you to go and create a documentary or things like that. Those are fun.
Yes, I think those are apart from writing, we do like stuff. But yeah, I mean, writing is a large part of what we do. I think after all, it's academic course, right? So we do a lot of writing, and of course, definitely reading. A lot of reading, which is important for you to grasp a lot of the concepts, because like a lot has been written about sociology before, so it's important for us to know what is really out there as well. Then after you get to doing your assignments, and like I said previously, there's also like research assignments that you do, and then that comes down, of course, into writing again, right? So you do your research, but you have to write it down anyway. Yeah. Another question we have is how important is an interest in current affairs if one is mostly in it for the societal behavior part of sociology? So I think this question is a little bit confusing. Maybe I could sort of like summarize it a little bit and say something. Maybe maybe we can just do generally. Right? How important is interest in current affairs for sociology? What do you think, Paul?
I think current affairs. Let me think of an analogy. I think this is like if you're a musician, right? And then say, I mean, nowadays a lot of people go and have music lessons, right? You go for music lessons, and then you learn how to play an instrument, and then you go through the kind of the grading system, right? And then you learn until maybe grade 8 or whatever, or you do that. The current affairs part of things is basically when people say you want to be a musician, you need to go out there and put yourself out there and play with other musicians, right? It's the same thing. With sociology, you can study it as an academic discipline, and you can read about all the theories and readings that they give you. But if you don't use it to engage with current affairs, then your understanding of sociology it will be quite different. The timbre of your knowledge is not going to be as applied as someone would have who keeps up with current affairs, and so is constantly applying these theories and topics and perspectives to different issues around the world. And so I would say it's very important. Having an interest for current affairs is very important. it's not like you cannot survive sociology or do well in sociology without that. But for your own purposes and for your learning purposes, it'll be much easier if you are interested in current affairs and you keep up with it and you have your own opinions on it, right? I think part of being a good sociology student is having opinions. We're not going to feed you opinions. We're going to feed you ways to think about things, right? And you're supposed to come up with your own opinion. It's much easier to be a sociology student if you have an opinion.
Right. And I think that's very true as well. Like, I think when it comes to current affairs, there's actually multiple things, and because sociology is so broad, right? Like, so I mean, it's quite a broad sort of study. So multiple current affairs items do apply to a lot of the things that we study. But I think, like for specific specializations, then there is also that kind of current affairs for that specific track that you're going to, like, for example, environmental sociology. You probably focus a lot more on environmental news or regulations and things like that, and they all sort of tie in together. So yeah, I think current affairs is a practice in applying your sociological skills. Yeah. Okay, actually I have a very, very good question for Prof. Actually, I'm very interested to know as well. What describe a good fit for the sociology program? So what is the ideal student for you, Prof? Like, who would you want to see come into sociology? What's a good fit?
So I've already talked a little about this just now, because I said, like, if you want to be good at sociology, you must have an opinion, right? So an opinionated person is quite good for sociology, because then you are able to see and be able to kind of challenge yourself with your opinion, right? You take your opinion out there, you talk to students about it, talk to your professors about it, see whether that's an opinion that you're willing to hold, given more evidence from studies around the world, or from your own personal experience. Having an opinion is quite important. Other than that, of course, other than having an opinion, you have to be humble, right? So you're always going to be challenged by different perspectives from other people who may not share your lived experience. And you must be willing to be challenged by that and constantly question your own things that you take for granted as real, as unchanging, as immutable. You must be able to take in some of these criticisms and learn from it, right? And so being humble is important. Being critical is also important, right? So being critical and being humble are not two separate things. They have to come together, right? So people often think of being critical as being like kind of arrogant and standoffish, but that's not what critical means, right? Being critical means you try and understand why is it that you believe what you believe? Why do people believe what they believe? What is the logic behind it? What are some of the evidence and what are some of the data that speaks to this, right? Can I hold that together, right? So that's really about being critical. It's not about being the most like disagreeable person, right? Critical is not disagreeable. Critical just means you are able to evaluate and discern what alternatives are better, what way of thinking is better, and how it fits the world. So a good sociology student would have these aspects, these characteristics towards approaching anything in life, and also be interested about the world. As with the question just now on current affairs, you should be able to keep up with what is happening around you, so that you can constantly apply this knowledge, right? And so I would say what helps you to be a good sociology student is also engagement with the world. So don't spend all your time in school with your readings and being buried deep in that. Like, go and live a life, right? Go and like find something to do, contribute to the community, have some hobbies, interact with other people, find other people who you can interact with that are not like you, right? That go beyond your own social circle. And you realize that all these extracurricular things actually help your curricular activities, because you are able to see much broader and have a lot more deep experiences with that.
Yeah, I think that's quite true. I think NTU and the school of SSS has a lot of opportunities that is available. We have a lot of volunteering opportunities that you can use to see different facets of society, right? Like, you can even apply, like, even like what Prof was saying, you can take stuff from the volunteering and then you can apply it to your studies, but you can do the vice versa as well. You can take your studies and you apply it to your volunteering experience, because there's stuff like ethnography that we do, and then you go to when you volunteer, and then you look at it through a sociological lens, and it really helps you with your sort of work that you do in your CCAs and things like that. Yeah, and then you can do that vice versa. It's really quite an interesting kind of thing. There's this kind of opportunities available, And you know, to your point about being open to changes, I think that is something that's really interesting. I mean, very, very vital. Yeah. I think when you enter sociology, I think you can expect to have a lot of your opinions change. I think one of the very first times I read, when in year one, I read there was a side reading, it was Naomi Klein's No Logo. And when I read it, I was like, wow, it made me depressed for like a good 2 weeks before I really had my entire like worldview shifted of the way we interact with our clothes and the way we interact with labor. And I was quite affected by it for quite a while. But after eventually we come up, you're like, yeah, it really does change your worldview on a lot of things, and you have to be open about it. And then understand that just because you live a life in Singapore doesn't mean that the rest of the world or the rest of society, even in Singapore, is living the same life as you are. And that's where sociology comes in to understand a lot of the ways in which these differences manifest themselves. Because we are social scientists at the very end, right? So these are phenomena that we investigate. Yeah, so I think that's a very good, very interesting answer by Prof. Yeah. This question, next one. I appreciate this question. This question is from a mass comm student, which was my diploma. It says, do you have any insights for sociology graduates trying to enter advertising or marketing? I myself can't speak to that because I was trying to get away from advertising and marketing when I entered sociology. So, Prof, do you have any sort of like answers for this particular student? I mean, this prospective student.
Fun fact, I was also from mass comm. So
we do attract a certain type.
So I would say the question is about ads and marketing, right? I mean, the example that I raised just now about, I remember his name, Dennis Chu, right? About Dennis Chu and that ad about him being in different race groups and that having a backlash. That is an ad, right? And so being sensitive about these issues, especially in the field of ads and marketing, where like everything is public, right? And anything you do can have some sort of public either outcry or maybe they think that's good, right? All of these things reflect human life. So whether you are doing that kind of ad-based things or even in producing some kind of content, right? So documentaries or more than documentaries, perhaps ads, right? They all portray some part of they usually would portray some part of human life. And you want to portray that, being sensitive about the different issues that everyone else are sensitive about, being careful to portray things accurately and not in a biased way. And all of those things are what sociology gives you. And makes you a much more informed kind of advertiser or marketer that appeals to human emotions and the human experience that is not based in biasness or based in depravity, right? Like you want these ads to appeal to people in a deep way that is good, not in a negative way, and not be known for all these negative things. And so I would say that's just one part of things, right? But having an intuition as to what society can accept, what will appeal to society, that makes you a better marketer or advertiser in many ways.
Right, yeah, actually that's something I never really thought about. I mean, like now with a lot of like cancel culture and things like that going on, like being able to understand society and societal structures really do give you an idea of like how you can pivot your marketing of some of your products, and how you can do it in a sensitive yet a way that you can get it out to a lot of people and that people will resonate with. Understanding society that way, which is what I thought would be it's a very good answer. It's not something that I would have thought about or a lot of people have thought about. So thank you for that, Prof. Just want to say that you actually don't have a lot of fans on our questions. A lot of people are saying, this is the favorite session they have so far. Let him cook.
That's good.
Doing very well. But if you guys have any questions, other than compliments, you can put them on, and then we can ask these questions as well. If you have anything you want to ask Prof about his experiences at NTU as well, I can help you ask him these questions. Very interesting question I have is choosing between the different social sciences we have in SSS, right? So if someone has a wide-ranging interest in humans or humanity and their behavior and is unsure of which social science field to pursue, why would they want to choose sociology over the rest of the social sciences? So like psychology, cons, and PBJ. Why sociology if you're interested in human, or you're interested in humanity and interested in social sciences? Why sociology specifically?
I mean, I guess just now we addressed how psychology is different from sociology, right? And I think it really depends on what appeals to you as a person, right? Seeing social inequality, if it appeals to you, poverty, and you're trying to understand these things better, then sociology is a good fit for you because you naturally, I guess, would invest a bit more time and effort into something that you are interested in, that you're passionate about, rather than something that perhaps would you think you imagine would give you a bit more economic returns in the future, right? University is a time for you to really explore your intellectual faculties, to live out the life that you want. I mean, once you come out of university, your working life that will look different, right? So in college, it's time for you to really explore, to give yourself space for your interests to grow, to bloom, for yourself to grow in different ways. Sociology gives you that because it allows you to bloom in so many different ways. It's such a broad discipline. That if you are interested in any aspect, you are able to go in and you're able to dive deeper into that aspect, right? Perhaps maybe compared to other disciplines which have their own diversity as well, but in a different way. So if you are interested in societal structures and how that affects human beings, right? For example, you feel like people tend to blame the victim, right? That's something that sociology speaks very strongly to. Or you're interested and you have good you have strong lived experiences in areas such as race or gender, some very societal level type constructs. Then sociology will be good for you. It would help you to feed those aspects of your intellectual curiosity that you have. But of course, I mean, if you're interested in other things as well, or like psychology, economics, like you will do well in those places as well. I'm not saying sociology is better in any way, but if you are interested in sociology, then come to sociology. Don't let things like economic considerations or how much will I be paid when I graduate, or like where can I go hinder you from that, because that will settle itself.
Yeah. I think if you're passionate about it, then when you come here eventually, I mean, like your jobs. I mean, you definitely will secure a job. I think just now during the previous talk, we had a graph of how many people secure jobs. You can, it's not a bad pace. It's quite decent as compared to the rest of the other majors as well. And then there's other stuff like how many percentage of people secured a job. I think 90+% of us did. So I think there is these economic considerations like what Prof said would sort of like work themselves out. But I do want to add that if you're still considering what you want to do, I think a good tip that I can offer is that you can read up on some of the basic sort of texts. I think for all the majors, there are a few defining texts that we have that comes in our canon, and then you read some of the sociological texts, and you wonder like, do I resonate with what the work of these people are doing, right? So for example, I think a very popular book in sociology, especially in Singapore right now, is Thurin's book, right? Yeah, like this is what inequality looks like. I think a lot of people read that, and then they get an idea of like what sociology is about, what sort of ethnographical studies is about, and then you think you're really interested in it, then sociology is for you. But there are other texts as well, right? Like, so for example, like C. Wright's Mills, The Promise, and then these are things that you can find on Google. And if you realize that wow, you do really like the way that they write about it, the way that social phenomena is being investigated, then after you have sort of an idea of what it's about, then you should all the more apply for sociology. Then you know that it is something that you're passionate about and something you want to learn. Yeah, I think that's a good way to determine what major is good for you in social sciences. Yeah. Another question, I think this is I mean, we can try a bit lightly on this one, right? It's about whether or not how the question is what makes the NTU sociology program different from other schools. So I think maybe you can bring us through some of the ways in which NTU sociology program is a bit more unique.
I think, I mean, for me, the main difference between NTU sociology and sociology in other places are the people. I think, I mean, of course, you have to look at the faculty, the community. So I would say if you're interested in sociology in general and you are just deciding which schools to go to, then look up the faculty and see what they do, what their research interests are, what kind of courses they teach, how do they interface with the public as kind of practicing sociologists, and make a decision from there, right? I think people make programs unique, right? Of course, the structure of the program and all that kind of thing are secondary. Whether we make you take like 3 or 4 core modules or things like that, I think that's secondary. What you want when you come here is, like I said, that dialogue with professors, that dialogue with students, right? So look for a place that you feel you will be at home, you will be at home with, right? Whether you can speak about the things you want to talk about, whether there are people who are experts in the fields that you care about. I think that's most important.
Yeah, and we do have quite a lot of professors that are quite good at their fields, right? Yeah, so we have our unit. I mean, of course, other schools have that as well. But we do have like specific people who are good at what they do in that specific field. Yeah, so I think those are very good. There's a very good perspective to take on whether or not how whether or not choose NTU sociology over other universities, right? Well, I think we're coming to a close because we're running out of time. So I'm just gonna wrap it up. Prof, do you have anything else you want to add to this discussion, or to let anybody or any prospective students know?
Maybe I will just leave you with a word of warning. So like when you, for example, like you grow up in Singapore all your life, right? And then you have never eaten like nice, for instance, like tacos, right? And then you go to like Mexico, you go to LA, right? And then you eat the best taco you have ever eaten in your life. And then you go like, I cannot eat tacos in Singapore. That's a bit like the sociological experience that you have in NTU, right? You begin to see all these things in a new light, and you'll never be able to go back to your old ways of seeing things. And that's a good thing. And I hope that you come here for that.
Yes, I think I completely agree with you, Prof. There are some things that I can just never really see in the same light again, and I think like that's both a curse and a blessing. I think like being able to see it in that sort of way is I appreciate that I'm able to see it in that sort of way, but sometimes I do miss not knowing, like just being ignorant about it. So yeah, I do think that's a very a good way of putting it. Yeah. Well, then thank you so much, Prof, and of course thank you to the audience for your questions. Thank you, Prof Shannon, for your time and for being with us here to answer all these questions. Yeah. Our next talk will be on economics, studying economics at NTU. So if you're on NTU's open house microsite, you can look at the views of all the talks for a COHAS, which is the College of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences, on the microsite. Right. Have a good day, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you in the next session, or even in NTU itself. Bye.